All right, now I am going to whip us through a bit of a report card of our roadmap, which hopefully most of you have heard about, our $100 billion target aspiration for the farm gate sector by 2030. This roadmap has been adopted and has really set the narrative, so we're really pleased that it's still part of the conversation. And when we launched it in 2018, we were really committed to reporting on it every year. We didn't want it to be something, a nice document, and that's mine, original version with coffee stains and sausage roll crust and pastry all over it. We didn't want it to be something that was just put on a shelf, so I carry mine around wherever I go, and we refer to it because we want it to be live, we want it to be real, and we want it to be meaningful. So it does have bipartisan support. So I'm going to whip through where we're up to in terms of checking in. As I said, when we launched it, we said that we were going to give ourselves a bit of a report card. For those that aren't as familiar with it, the $100 billion vision and aspiration is kind of the leading target aspiration metric that we always wanted it. We wanted to lead with that, but you'll see there we've got 5 pillars, but within the plan, interestingly for us, we wanted to make sure that we had some actions and some metrics. So there's 66 actions in there. We lead with the $100 billion and we might refer to the pillars, but we've got 66 actions and 20 metrics. So there's 19 other metrics that we use. And some of those things you can see on the screen there, the growing community trust, report against that, improving risk management. I'll go through a couple of those things. So the document itself is really comprehensive, and I think that's what's made it stand a bit of a test of time. We're 5 or 6 years into it, and we'll continue to report on it as we get closer to 2030. So a bit of context before we start. When we started the journey, the industry was $58 or $60 billion. And you can see from this chart, I thought this was quite interesting, that the value of the agriculture industry has essentially hovered around 50 or 60 billion for a few decades, which I think is quite interesting given the technology and developments and innovation that we've seen over the last couple of decades. But we've obviously hit a bit of a spike in the last 5 years. And if you recall that we started at 60 billion, and we're now this year at 90 billion, a 50% increase in those 5 years, $30 billion. And you can see the historical trend of the agriculture industry sort of just bubbling away, and then all of a sudden we go bang, up $30 billion. So it has been a really good measurement for us just to keep track of. You can see, and I'll get to this, you can see that with the forecast for hotter, drier conditions, there's likely to be, as the chart reflects, an ongoing dip. The question is, how big is that dip going to be for us? So again, just in terms of some context, so we look at total farm production here, just on the graph on the left-hand side. You can see the value really dropping off, obviously, with the volume. So that's total farm production, and it may well be that it goes down to sort of $60 or $70 billion again in the next couple of years. But looking at the two larger sectors, crops and livestock, you see again with the forecasts, the value of the sector, the cropping sector, grain sector is going to drop off significantly. Likewise, volume, price reasonably stable. Really interesting livestock chart there. You can see the prices have gone through the floor, and I don't need to tell many people in this room about the challenges that many producers are facing in terms of sheep and livestock prices at the moment. The values obviously come off a bit, but of course, with what's happening in the marketplace at the moment, the volume is ticking up. So just some dynamics there around a couple of the key sectors. And we've seen the gross value of crop production is expected to fall by about $11 billion, and prices and value being wiped off the livestock sector. This is a really interesting chart, I think, just in terms of, again, some context about how we're marching towards this $100 billion. You see there that total farm costs, which is the bright green chart, going up, net farm income going down, and net value of farm production going down. So farmers' costs are going up, prices are going down, and that means obviously that income is going down as well. So that is going to be a real challenge. And I've got a bit of an example here. So a friend of mine, Angus, just to demonstrate the point. Angus is a beef producer. Last year, Angus sold 50 steers, and they're about 450 kilos each. He received $6.50 a kilo, $3,000 an animal, about 150K he got for those 2 decks of cattle that he sent last year. Last week, Angus sent 50 steers, same weight, got $3 a kilo, or $1,500 an animal, or $75,000 for his couple of decks. In that time, in 12 months, Angus's interest rate has gone from 2 to 8%. So if Angus has got $1 million loan, his interest bill used to be 30K, and now it's 80K, meaning Angus has to sell 10 steers, used to be able to have to sell 10 steers to make his interest payment. He now has to sell 50 steers just to make his interest payment. So that's the demonstration of what's actually happening out there in the industry at the moment, and it's obviously having huge flow-on effects. Some of you will recall the Norco study that we did this week that really demonstrated some of the challenges that are facing producers. And it's the same with cropping. If you talk about 5 tonne to the hectare, people are now harvesting 2 tonne or less, 30% lower prices, and this is business. Farmers are business people and they get the ebbs and the flows, but it's just really interesting in terms of context as we sort of see the fluctuations in farm gate value, is that what's happening on the ground will have a huge influence over that. Again, just another little bit of context, that's total lending to agribusiness over the last 4 or 5 years. You can see it's increasing, and the lending is up 20% on 4 years ago. Obviously, low interest rates, record lows, now getting up, and we're likely to see another rise on Tuesday. So things are going north in terms of the risk that farmers are facing in terms of keeping their head above water. You think about a 2% or 2 to 8% increase and much more chips on the table in terms of the risk assessment that farmers have to face. So just some context before we move into a bit of a report card on our roadmap. And what I'm going to do is give a bit of a report card on 5 of the pillars, and I'm going to match that up with our farmer sentiment survey. We surveyed 1,600 farmers and asked them a few questions on what they think the challenges that they're facing and the opportunities they're facing. So our assessment on how we're going matched up with what 1,600 farmers told us they were thinking. So customers in the value chain, again, I think we've got some work to do. So you can see trust in agriculture is going well. I think we're very, well, I know all the stats say and all the feedback we get is we're a very trusted industry, and that's continuing to go north. The infrastructure issue is a real problem. I was talking to Charlie Blomfield. Charlie's in the audience today. He's a farmer from Canowindra. Charlie was telling me last night that he's facing, and this won't be an isolated story or a unique story, it's across the country, but it was just pertinent to the chat that I was having with Charlie. In terms of a bridge being out in his community, and it's been repaired twice, it's still unusable. So that means for Charlie, he's got to go another 400 Ks to get his crop to the market, and that's huge increase in costs and time because of the delays and the inability for successive governments, collective governments, to actually invest in infrastructure. So 4 times probably what the cost and time it is to actually get product to market. So in terms of customers and specifically the value chain, we've got some real work to do in that space. The Farmer Priority Survey, no surprises. Survey says that investing in rural infrastructure is where the government isn't doing enough. So a very good match up there. The next pillar, growing sustainably. There's some better news on the sustainability front, I have to say. Australian Ag Sustainability Framework, nature repair work, the Ag Climate Statement. We've got Farming for the Future. We've got a whole range of initiatives out there that, for us, indicate that the industry is going in the right direction in terms of measuring, monitoring, managing, reporting on the sustainability aspects. There's obviously some increased tension in terms of the charge towards renewable energy and what that's meaning to agricultural land in rural communities. So that's a negative, and we've still got a bit of work to do in terms of food waste. But in terms of the overall sustainability, not too bad. Farmer survey says environmental laws and legislation is going to have a huge impact on their productivity, which DJ referred to earlier. Unlocking innovation, not too bad in this space. I wanted to just call out the drought and innovation hubs, and the trajectory that they're on is again going in the right direction. They've taken a little bit of time to get going, but the signs are positive in terms of connecting up with research institutions, with producer groups, with communities, and the important part of getting that research, that innovation actually out into the paddock. There's more work to do, but that's going in the right direction. For us, the farm data code and new connectivity options are really a big positive. The survey that we undertook, interestingly, the access to telecommunications was actually number 15 on the list. So I think that demonstrates and signals that things are going in the right direction in terms of, and there's still work to go, don't get me wrong, but we're going in the right direction in terms of telecommunications and connectivity and making the gains from those. So that's not going too bad. The mark's not up there, but I gave it a B-. Don't know what happened to the scorecard. Right, people in the community. C+ here, and there's a couple of big issues, we won't call them red line issues, but red circle issues. We've got some great stuff going on with ag apprenticeships and skills insight. I know Duncan Fraser's here in the room. The ag apprenticeship idea and concept is getting some traction. We've been talking about this for a little while. It's a key part of our roadmap, and it's actually starting to grow into something that we think is going to make a real difference. So skills insight there. Minister Watt referred to his fee-free TAFE spaces. These are small gains in that space, and we have to actually work harder in that vocational space. So in terms of skilling our workplace, not too bad. We would think that we've got some real work to do in terms of migration programs. Minister Watt did say that there's been an increase in the PALM scheme. The numbers are going in the right direction, but we still haven't got a regime that understands and reflects the needs of agriculture, the agricultural workforce. We can continue to work with the PALM scheme, we continue to work with backpacker scheme, but they are retrofitted for agriculture. They are not a scheme that lines up with the requirements of the agricultural workforce. And likewise, the buybacks within the Murray-Darling Basin, the social impacts are not being considered well enough. Minister Plibersek has said it's not the primary or the first port of call. The fact that there is effectively an open slather in the legislation around buybacks is extremely concerning, incredibly concerning. And we'll hold and stand by a position that the government isn't reflecting the impact of or understanding the impact of those buybacks well enough. So that could have been a D, but let's go with a C-. The survey said, again, no surprises. Most businesses, if not all, would employ more people if they could get their head around the industrial relations system and if it was easier. We have to do better in terms of getting people onto farms. It's hard enough to attract them to the industry. The rigmarole you've got to go through to employ someone is ridiculous. Capital and risk management, not too bad in this space. You saw the chart around increasing finance into the sector. Obviously that comes with its risks, but there is strong capital inflows into the business. The Future Drought Fund is a really good idea. It's 3 or 4 years into its lifespan. It's a game changer in terms of what it can do to the stability and certainty around drought policy. We haven't been able to nail drought policy in this country for a couple of 100 years. The Future Drought Fund will be a constant source of revision and funds and resources that can help us as an industry better manage risk. Is it perfect at the moment? Well, it's only 3 years in and we've got to try things. We've got to try things differently. We can't keep doing the same thing of continued handouts and things when people get into trouble. We actually have to try things differently, and I think the Future Drought Funds are a really key part in that. And we've got competition review commenced. Again, transparency and certainty in the marketplace for farmers is absolutely critical. So that's a positive. In terms of what the survey said, there was a lot of interest in the role and transparency across the supply chain. So from pre-farm gate, post-farm gate, processing, retailing, into the consumer household, the transparency, the equity. We know there's been consolidation, we know there's been efficiencies made, but there is a view in the farming sector that we can do better in terms of just rebalancing and improving the transparency and making sure there's equitable returns for all. So that is reflected in the survey. Just a couple of summary slides before I wind up on the farmer survey sentiments. You can see there, farmers love what they do and love where they do it. They are optimistic about the growth in the sector in the next 10 years, and that's a good thing. Confidence is really important particularly as we head into probably a couple of challenging years ahead. And almost half, but not quite half, feel better about they did than the industry 12 months ago. Interestingly, they don't necessarily feel valued by the Australian public, or not enough of them do. And again, I think that's an area where we can really work on, and because the surveys that we get from consumers feel or say that farmers are incredibly valued and trusted and respected. So there's a bit of a disconnect there that I think we have to perhaps work on as we go forward in the roadmap. Last slide before we get the panel out. So what does this all mean? We think that the government can listen to farmers a little bit more. We launched a campaign today. It's not new what we've been talking about. The issues that we've got in this campaign are issues that we've been advocating on for months, if not years. It's timely that we put them into a campaign and we work constructively and fairly and honestly with government. So this farmer sentiment survey says that most farmers, well, out of the 1,600, don't necessarily think that the government's doing a good job on behalf of farmers. So we're not making this stuff up. It's real, and as an industry body, it's our job to lead and to represent the sector, and that's what we will do. We'll use evidence and we'll use data and we'll be constructive, but there is clear evidence that we need to do better in terms of government policy, and that will be our task for how long it takes. So that's a bit of a summary. I suppose in terms of what does it all mean, 3 things. If anyone thought the $100 billion aspiration was going to be a walk in the park, I think they're dreaming. We had a real good crack at it, $90 billion, a couple of good seasons, good prices and things. It's going to be a challenge to get there. We're about halfway in our journey. It was a 12-year journey. We're about halfway into it. So we're going to have to do more work on some of those things. So the second point is working harder on labour and environmental policies. But there's some good stuff happening. The final point would be, let's be optimistic about what's in front of us in terms of things like ag apprenticeships, connectivity. the biodiversity and natural capital in environmental markets, rewarding and recognising farmers for what they do. There is some good stuff that we can get our hands on that will drive us towards that $100 billion target. So that would be my 3 wrap-up points, and I think now we're going to have a bit of a panel. Angie, I'll hand back to you. Thank you.